Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity, community service, volunteering, and just spreading positivity. You know, we're all about the positive vibes here on the show. And I've got a very special guest with me. He has worked in a variety of different roles in the wrestling business. I'm talking about wrestler, commentator, announcer, promoter, you name it. He has probably done it, one form or another. Pleased to welcome to the show, John Bullard. Welcome, John, to Wrestling with Heart.
Dan the man, thank you so much for having me on the show. Love what you're doing, and it's an honor to be on the show tonight with you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So let's talk about your upbringing and childhood. You're from the Midwest area, Indiana. Tell me about your upbringing and childhood.
Well, originally, actually, I was born and raised down south. I grew up in South Florida for most of my life, but
Okay.
as a child growing up, typical country kid, grew up in the farming area. So, you go to school Monday through Friday. Then Saturday mornings, it's the world of cartoons, and then this magical thing called professional wrestling comes on television and changed my entire life at 4 years old. So, uh,
Wow.
first memory of professional wrestling, 4 years old, was sitting in my Papa Sam's lap, watching WTBS 6:05 Eastern Time. Like most Southern kids, NWA, WCW. That was a life-changing moment for my time growing up. But I've also had like some other great memories too. But I came from a very blue collar family, uh, raised by a single parent who instilled a strong work ethic and the belief of the golden rules. You treat everyone with respect, and you be kind to everyone, and never try and take away from someone. Always trying to bring back and give back to your community and the people around you.
Yeah.
So I was very blessed with that type of life and type of people I had in my life.
And that's what we try to do on the show is just is talk about the kind things that wrestlers and people that are in the business do and just inspire someone, whether that's a fan or somebody that just happens to stumble across the podcast and wants to check us out. So you've had an amazing career, an amazing life. Got into wrestling at 4 years old. I mean, I got into wrestling when I was 5. So it's right around the same, kind of age time frame.
I tell you what was the life changing moment for me though, Stan, was when satellite television came into the area when I was growing up. And instantly as a kid, I went from watching just the local cable, like local TV syndicate shows,
Mhm.
but I also got to see like Memphis TV, Lance Russell, you know, I got to watch Texas wrestling. Then one night I went through a channel that spoke a language I didn't understand, and I got the chance to watch CMLL and Triple A, and got introduced at a very young age to Lucha Libre. And to me, that was so mind blowing because like here's all these guys who are looking like superheroes doing really cool things, and just blew my young mind because I was like, I'm watching something so different. And yeah, just satellite cable for a kid who grew up in a town that was the area I grew up in, probably about 1,500 people in general. So very small town. So if you didn't have a whole lot of kids in your neighborhood, your imagination and television and books was like the escape to see what another world looks like.
Yeah, like you were living in a part of the area where you were just right on the border of Mexico and just seeing like a different culture, being exposed to that, that is life changing. And you see that the lucha style is being integrated now into American wrestling culture. It's just mind blowing how over time you just see the progression of wrestling evolve.
Absolutely, wrestling. Growing up as a kid from the who watched wrestling in the 1980s, and watching through the 90s and 2000s, I'll definitely say over the years how much the evolution of wrestling has changed. You know, it used to be back in the 1980s, no one never left their feet. And then the 90s, you're starting to see a little bit more. Then get to the I'll say like late 90s, early 2000s, you're starting to see more of the Japanese, a lot more of the Lucha Libre inspired wrestling skills being put to the test. Now everyone, no matter what size they are, has those skills. I'm happy and I'm proud that YouTube's available because like now, like all the kids I talk to that I mentor in wrestling, it's like, okay, you should go back and you see that move you're doing there. Yeah, well, Brian Danielson does it.
Hmm.
Okay, well, Danielson got that from Tiger Mask, or he got that from Dynamite Kid. Go back and watch their stuff in the '80s, 20 years ahead of its time.
Yeah, I mean that's stuff that you're influenced by, you get hooked on, and then like you kind of have to watch back and look back and go, okay, this makes sense because when you see a guy like Brian Danielson pull those moves off, he studied tape, he's watching tape, and so you kind of have to pay respect to the people that came before you, and you see that in the on those tapes,
Oh yeah,
watching back.
yeah, yeah. You can definitely tell different wrestlers who are their influences or lineage came from, with certain talents that they study and learn from.
Hmm.
With Davidson, of course, William Regal, was a mentor of his, but Regal also got that lineage from Marty Jones. Marty Jones got that from Billy Robson. Billy
The
Robson
British.
from Riley,
Yeah.
Gym, where Robson was trained at. Same thing with Carl Gotch and so forth and so on. So yeah, wrestling's a beautiful thing once people start doing like the whole lineage tracing of who they came
Yeah.
from and who trained who and who trained what. It's
It's
like, wow, it's amazing how that follows.
and it just goes to show you that American wrestling is largely influenced by the stuff that happens overseas, like the Japanese style, the lucha style, the British style. I mean, those are the pioneers, the true pioneers of the sport. And you see today its influence. It's fascinating the way you just described it, because nowadays uh everything's all one big melting pot. You see it and it's incredible. It really is. But speaking about mentors, who are your mentors starting out in the business?
So Spike Moore was one of my first mentors in wrestling. He was a regional wrestler trained at the WCW Power Plant. To kind of give you a little backstory about how I got in wrestling, that to me
Yeah.
is one
Yeah.
of those stories I like telling people because it kind of
Yeah.
inspires people. So eighth grade year, I'm sitting in a place called a business tech lab class, and my school teacher at the time, Miss Leak, asked all the students, "What do you want to do when you get older, and you want to become the adult, and what's your plans?" And everybody was wanting to be doctors, lawyers, teachers. And she came to me and I said, "Well, I want to be in professional wrestling." And I never forgot this. She laughed and she said, "Well, that's cute. That's a pipe dream. Now get with reality." And I never forgot that as a kid because she was like my favorite teacher at the time. So as a kid, like I was devastated by this. Now, from eighth grade all the way up to 11th grade, I never talked about it again. Still a huge wrestling fan, still studied it, did all the go out in the backyard with my buddies and grapple and wrestle around like kids all did back in the 90s. But I never talked to another adult about what I wanted to do. Well, 11th grade year, English class 101. Had a PWI magazine tucked inside my English book. Already finished my class. I was ahead of the schedule, thinking I was being smart. I had a teacher named Miss Diane Struby, who was a blessing in this world. She comes walking up behind me and she sees that PWI magazine. Now, instead of yanking the magazine away from me, she goes, "Wow, who was number one for this year?" And instantly I kind of panicked and was like, "Hold up. She knows what the PWI is? Like, this is kind of cool. Like, all right." And I was like, and I looked up and I was like, "Oh, and I kind of gave her the answer. And she's like, "Oh, that's really amazing. My son's a professional wrestler." And instantly I was like, this is the coolest teacher on earth. And
Nice.
she was a friend of my family's for years, but I never knew her son did professional wrestling. Always knew her son was a ginormous guy. So At the end of the class, I was like, "Your son's a professional wrestler, the one that I know?" And she's like, "Yeah, you didn't know this?" I'm like, "No, I always thought like how cool he was, but I never knew like that's what he did." And she's like, "Yeah, he's Big Daddy Rhodes, and he wrestles on the local independent scene in Florida." I was like, "That's so cool." I was like, and this fell out of my mouth, kind of like that scene in the Christmas Story when he's moving the hubcap and it popped down. You're like, "Oh." Same thing for me. I'm like, "Wrestling," and she's like, "So you want to be in wrestling?" I was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Oh gosh, she's going to make fun of me." And she's like, and then and she said the one thing that changed my life, and I use this with every kid I meet, is you can do what you want to do in your life if you have the heart determination and you have the willpower to not give up when going gets tough. Now, this is a tough business. This is a business that at times can be very unforgiving, but if you stick it out, you can make it happen. But you gotta roll up your sleeves and put in the work. Best advice to me. Second thing she did for me, I got tickets to the next wrestling show coming to the area. You got free tickets. Come to the show. I'll introduce you to my son and also to Spike, who helps run the little local wrestling school. Sure enough, go there, talk to him. Next thing I was on mask is, hey, so you want to be a wrestler, huh? I was like, yeah. And kind of gave me the tryouts and the dates. And they asked me the biggest question: how old are you, kid? And instantly I was like, oh, and it's like, I'm too young. I know. So I was like, well, I'm only 17. But like, well, that's okay. We can still teach you some stuff, but you're not gonna get in the ring instantly and then bump around or nothing like that. You gotta start paying your dues. So every show, go to the building, set up, take down, clean up, do everything they ask. Never even ask a question why. It was yes, sir, let's do this. And so I remember times that he would hand me a huge stack of flyers. Go around town, go to every telephone post you see, put the flyer up. Get on my bike, ride through, post them up. And one night, I get a phone call. Hey, you got a suit and tie available? Now, this is the weirdest question I heard at that age. I'm like, yeah, I got a suit for Sunday for church. Why? Good. Bring it with you. Okay. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, why is he asking me this? So, wear my suit, go to the show. Well, found out that their ring announcer and commentator, who always was at every show, didn't make it that night. So here I was, young me, making my debut in that field. And so that was the beginning of me getting my foot in the door in wrestling business. And from 17 all the way up now to my age, I hate to age myself. I'm 40 years old now, but it's been this wonderful journey. So yeah, Spike Moore definitely is a mentor. Haven't talked to him in a long time. Need to reach out to him and see how he's doing. I know he's last time I heard he's living in Phoenix, Arizona.
Hmm.
But him,
Yeah.
uh, Mickey Grant, who helped create World Class Championship Wrestling, taught me a lot about filmmaking and production of wrestling when it comes to that. Brutal Bob Evans, which a lot of people in wrestling world talks about, is someone who I consider a tremendous mentor to me. And I've also had other mentors, the Lone Wolf Bobby Blade, veteran of Kentucky wrestling. He was one of the guys that anytime I had a question or anytime I had self doubt, he was one of the first guys like, "You got this. Like, don't don't quit. Don't give up. Don't let naysayers get to you. You're going to do fine." And yeah, those guys I owe a huge debt of gratitude to as well for spending time with a kid that honestly they didn't have to spend time with. They didn't have to take 5 minutes out of their day to talk to me or um, just to drop knowledge, but they did it. And I learned from them. If you find someone who's hungry, someone who wants to learn, someone who's eager to do well, you teach them and you do it well for them. And you don't ask for anything in return, just to pass that knowledge. So the day that you're not there, then you got someone there to carry on your legacy.
Wow, what a great story. I mean, you're basically telling me that there was a time when there was one teacher you had just
The power,
hated the idea.
power of one person. All it is, one person can change your life. I tell this to people all the time. People say, well, one person can't make a difference. One person can change someone's life. One person, one simple hello, one simple hug, one simple how you do can save a person's life.
You have a story you wanted to share with me about some things that I know you went through in your life.
Yeah, yeah. Not afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, tell me about
2000,
that.
2010. You're talking about my attempt on my life that I failed, which is I always tell people this when I do group speeches to kids. It's what I call my greatest failure became my greatest strength and my greatest victory in the end. 2010 was probably the worst year of my life. My father, the only person I've ever really known as a kid growing up, because I didn't really know my mom. He had a long battle with stage 4 cancer. So watching him go through those battles, watching him go through chemotherapy, watching him go through all those struggles, and then losing him on December 5th was just so much heartbreak. And then going through losing him on December 5th to going out of town to take care of stuff for his burial costs, and then coming back and seeing my house got broken into and everything stolen. And just, I mean, when I mean stolen, I mean everything was stolen. That left me with a whole burden on my heart at the time. I was thinking, like, I got nothing. No, even my family photos were taken. Like, everything was gone. So I was very young at that time. And yeah, I went through a really dark spell. December 10th, uh, I made a decision that I was going to commit suicide. And I tell people, like, when you talk about the divine intervention in life, sometimes you're thinking it's going to be that time, and then it's not. Uh, I always tell people this. Went down to the riverbank where my house was at, and wrote a letter and took a gun that I have fired 100 times, never jammed on, not once. Cleaned it, wrote the letter out, put in a message, went in, put the gun in my mouth, pulled the trigger. I'm the only few people that say, did it. Pulled the trigger, gun jammed. A gun
Oh,
that never jammed, not one day in my life. Not once. Now, when this happened, I ain't gonna lie. I broke down. Because I was thinking to myself, like, lost my father, lost everything I've ever owned, and I couldn't even do this. I just beyond devastated. Get up, was decided I'm gonna go probably walk back up to the house. Don't know what I want to do, but I was in the mental state of I tried and I failed. Well, while walking across, coworker of mine, it's my good friend Randy Nance, always once again power one person. This probably would be like my definition of this entire interview. How one person changes lives. Randy Nance was probably one of the coolest friends I've ever had in my life. Great coworker. Comes driving up, sees me walking across the road. Randy knows I never walk anywhere, I always drive. He stops his truck, he pulls, and he reverses right back. He's like, "Get in the truck." I was like, "Okay," and I don't know why. I don't think he knows what was going on, and I didn't try to let on. He's like, "Get in the truck, man." And I was like, "Okay." I'm jumping in the truck with him. He's like, "We're just going to ride around this talk." It's okay. We ride around, we start talking. Randy was like, "You just lost your dad, didn't you?" I was like, "Yeah." Because at that time when we worked together, I took FMLA. As I full medical leave of absence, I had to take care of my dad. And I was like, "Yeah, I lost him 5 days ago." And he was like, "Well, there's a few things that you need to do before you figure out what you're going to do with your life." He's like, "Now that you have this freedom, now that you've lost him, he would probably want you to go try to live your life, but he would probably want you to also try to discover your happiness again." He's like, "You've had all that mournfulness, you had all this heartbreak, you literally watched him crumble in front of you." He's like, "You need to give yourself some time to grieve, but you also need to give yourself time to actually start enjoying life again." and finding reasons. He gives me this great advice. This is the same advice I give to everyone I talk to go through depression. Get yourself a notebook. Every day, find one reason to live. Find one thing. It doesn't have to be, today I'll lift 500 pounds. It could be like, today I'll watch the sunrise. Or today I see birds chirp. Or I see, I heard a baby laugh with bouncing on the lap of a mother. Little things. Watching a flower, little things that you can actually appreciate. He said it the best. He said the beauty is simplicity. He said, if you give simplicity a chance, the world's beautiful thing. More beautiful than a painting. I was like, wow. And it hit me. I was like, I never thought of any of this stuff. Because at that time I was drinking myself. I was just in a dark place. He said, now I want you to do another thing. He said, now you're outside of this notebook. He said, I want you to buy a map. And he said, make it a world map if you want. Or a map of the United States. Doesn't matter. Just have a map. Then I want you to close your eyes. I want you to take a dart. Wherever that dart lands, go visit that location. So I did that numerous times. And every time I would always land someplace I'd never been to before. So I'd go on these road trips and I would go and sometimes not know not one soul in that area, not one soul in that state, and there's been a few that I've been to a couple of other countries that I've never thought I would ever go to, but it's the best experience because I got to meet people from all walks of life. Um, I got to see the beauty of human kindness for many, but I also got to see what real suffering was as well too, which is eye-opening because when you feel like you have suffered, fails in such comparison when you see someone who's been through it 10 times worse, and yet that person is still standing. And you have to ask yourself, like, if they can go through this, then I have no excuse not to keep going myself. Life changing. Those moments in life changes your perspectives. Really does. So once again, power of one person. It took one person seeing something that they knew that was didn't look right. I'm gonna stop and talk to him. And he did. Years later, I told that to Randy. I was like, I don't know if you knew this or not. I was like, you saved my life. And he's like, I kind of figured. He kind of knew like something was up. He's like, kind of figured he was going through a dark place, but you need someone to reach out to and talk to. So in return, I've paid the favor over to numerous other people as well over the years because I felt like, you know what, pay it forward. And one of the things I try to do is a lot of youth outreach. I'll try to always talk to young kids that I know I can see they're kind of going down a dark path. They're kind of going down the wrong route in life. When I see someone on Facebook or social media kind of going, they kind of make those not so like out in the open post about their depression, but someone who survived through it. You can see the subtle things. You're like, yeah, you're about to end your life. If I don't reach out and say something to you right now, I would regret this. And so, yeah, I try to do my best to always reach out to people. And I tell people all the time too, if you're going through a dark place in life, and I don't care if you don't know me, reach out to me. I'll listen to you. No, I'll do my best to help you out.
As you said, all it takes is just one person, and it's interesting because seeing different cultures, meeting different people, seeing how other people live their lives, and you look at your life, it
Oh
just
yeah.
provides a different experience. And when you're going to these different places, what's the one thing that you can say that you enjoyed the most when you visited?
For me, not really knowing someone, but yet that person was willing to break bread and share a meal or share their experiences. India was like that for me. You know, uh, being a guy that wasn't Indian and getting to meet people from that country and meeting the different caste system levels, you would have to say. Uh, there's times you see people who were the poorest of the poor, and yet they found happiness in the simplicity of things. seeing mystics on the rivers. You know, these elderly old men who have lived for almost 100 years, part wisdom, just to sit next to them and listen to the water and just listen to them talk. Getting to meet the wrestlers of the Akaras, their training facilities they have in India, just to see that and the dedication of strength building, but also it's almost like a religious thing with them too.
Sure.
Um, so little things like that was really cool. The thing is too, I don't sound preachy or nothing, but I noticed that a lot of people that are very wealthy never seem happy. But yet I've seen people who have almost no wealth at all be more happier than someone who has all the money in the world. It's wild to think about that. Wild concept at times. But simplicity, just a little simple living, can really change a man's outlook on life.
And it seems like the older you get, the more things you were worried about at 20 may not be something to really think about when you're 40
Exactly.
and onwards. And, I got to say, like, I'm very sorry that you had to go through such a
Don't be,
horrific and tragic
don't be,
experience.
don't ever apologize for that. I don't feel sorry for it. Honestly, I'm glad it happened. That I went through that attempt. I'm glad that I went through those battles because if I didn't, I don't think I would be the person today that I am that tries to help others. Sometimes you have to go through suffering to appreciate the beauty of things. There's times that I guess the best way I explain it is if you have never had a rainy day, if you never had dark clouds over you and you always had sunshine, will you really actually appreciate the sunshine if it's always there?
Yeah, sometimes you have to go through some dark periods to get to the light.
The
But I
light
mean,
makes you appreciate it though. And that light, when you finally get to it, the appreciation is 10 times stronger than what it was if you never understood what struggles were.
losing all your belongings and property, and that's just horrifying. And then on top of that, you have a death in the family. That's scary.
Oh yeah, it is. But this is also how I see it too. I I learned that even though how much I can miss those valuables, I've replaced it and returned it with better memories and new memories in life and things that I have organically was blessed with that no one can take away from me. So once you have that strength, now sometimes you got to let the past go. And that's another thing I try to teach my students and people when I talk to them is the art of letting go. And sometimes letting go of things gives you more strength and more balance than anything else.
It's all about the passage of time, and the older you get, the more stuff you lose, but you also gain some things as well. You gain perspective of the world around you. You start reading up on things, studying up on things that you didn't really think was, you knew before. Not, and so all you can do is just look forward. John, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers watching this on YouTube. Where can people find more about you on social media?
Well, they could definitely find me on Instagram, Big Fight Bullard on Instagram. That is one of my main accounts. John Bullard on Facebook. You can't miss me. Just you see a picture of me, and then you definitely know it's me. Um, that's my main two things. I also have a YouTube channel as well. I'll send you a link to it.
Yes,
I'd love
please. We'll subscribe. Well, both of us will subscribe to each other's channels.
love to. Would love to, Stan. But yeah, just that's and Facebook's my main way for anybody to reach out to me. If anybody wants to reach out and want to talk bookings, I'll be glad to. But also, if you just want to reach out and say, "Hey, I need advice on something," or I also hope this video saves someone's life, or this video inspires someone to chase after their dream. Because take it from the kid who grew up in a small town that came from a single parent home, didn't come from wealth by no means, and was told by a school teacher that their dream was a little silly. But all it took was another teacher to say, your dream could become a reality if you work at it. It can happen. You just got to put in the work.
I like to hear that. John, thank you so much, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Stan, it'd be an honor.
All right. Take care.
You too.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.